Imagine a massive alien slave ship crashes in the Mojave Desert. 300,000 extraterrestrial refugees emerge into a world that doesn't want them, and Hollywood has the perfect allegory
Oh, shit.
for Reagan-era immigration anxiety. This should have been science fiction gold. When Alien Nation hit theaters in October 1988, it had everything going for it. James Caan and Mandy Patinkin delivered committed performances, the makeup effects were genuinely impressive, and the core concept tackled immigration, prejudice, and assimilation with surprising nuance. The timing seemed perfect too, arriving in an era when audiences were hungry for thoughtful sci-fi that said something meaningful about our world. Yet despite a solid $16 million budget and legitimate star power, Alien Nation barely scraped together $25 million worldwide.
I am going out to the car. I will meet you there.
Critics were lukewarm, audiences stayed home, and what should have launched a franchise instead became a cautionary tale about missed opportunities. Here's the fascinating part though. Just 1 year later, the TV series based on the same concept ran for an entire season and spawned multiple TV movies. Clearly, there was an audience for this story. So what went wrong with the original film? How did Hollywood take such a promising concept and turn it into a commercial disappointment that nearly killed the franchise before it began?
Strader.
You killed Strader! No!
No!
The story of Alien Nation's failure begins in the boardrooms of 20th Century Fox, where executives took one look at writer Rockin S. O'Bannon's original screenplay and decided it needed to be fixed. O'Bannon had crafted a darker, more provocative exploration of xenophobia and cultural integration, but the studio saw dollar signs in the buddy cop formula that was dominating the late 80s. This was the era of Lethal Weapon and 48 Hours, and Fox wanted their own franchise. The problem was that Alien Nation's thoughtful social commentary didn't fit neatly into the shoot first, ask questions later template. So they forced an awkward marriage between meaningful allegory and generic action beats, creating a film that satisfied neither demographic. Director Graham Baker found himself caught between competing visions. The makeup department, led by Stan Winston's team, was creating genuinely impressive alien designs that suggested a serious science fiction film. Meanwhile, the script was being rewritten to include car chases, shootouts, and one-liners that wouldn't have felt out of place in a Stallone movie. The result was a tonal mess that never knew what it wanted to be. The technical execution suffered from these creative compromises. While the newcomer makeup was convincing, the action sequences felt cheap and rushed. Fox allocated most of the $16 million budget to above-the-line costs and star salaries, leaving the actual filmmaking to make do with television-level resources. When your alien integration drama suddenly needs to deliver spectacular car crashes, that budget shortfall becomes painfully obvious. Even more damaging was the marketing strategy. Fox's trailers emphasized explosions and buddy cop banter while barely mentioning the immigration themes that made the story unique. They were trying to sell Alien Nation as just another action movie, which confused sci-fi fans who might have been interested in the deeper concepts and disappointed action fans who found the film too talky and philosophical. The pacing reflected these competing priorities. Scenes exploring newcomer culture and the challenges of integration were rushed to make room for conventional plot mechanics. The drug subplot involving alien narcotics felt perfunctory, existing mainly to provide an excuse for the climactic action sequence. Character development took a backseat to hitting familiar genre beats, leaving audiences with little emotional investment in the outcome. Perhaps most frustratingly, the film's best moments proved how effective it could have been with a clearer vision. Scenes showing newcomer families adapting to human society, the casual prejudice of everyday interactions, and the complexity of San Francisco's position as a bridge between two worlds suggested a much more interesting movie lurking beneath the surface. These glimpses of what Alien Nation could have been only made the final product more disappointing. The studio's lack of confidence in their own material became a self-fulfilling prophecy, creating exactly the kind of forgettable genre exercise they were apparently afraid the original concept would become. Have you revisited Alien Nation recently? Does it work better now than it did in 1988? And what other promising sci-fi films were ruined by studio interference? Let me know in the comments, and subscribe for more deep dives into cinema's most fascinating failures. The tragedy of Alien Nation becomes most apparent when examining the performances that actually worked, highlighting just how much potential was squandered by poor creative decisions and misguided priorities. James Caan brought genuine gravitas to Detective Matthew Sykes, but his character was shackled by every tired buddy cop cliché imaginable. Caan's natural intensity and lived-in cynicism could have powered a much more complex exploration of prejudice and personal growth. Instead, he was stuck delivering lines like, "I work alone," and going through the predictable arc of the racist cop who learns to respect his alien partner. What makes this particularly frustrating is that Caan clearly understood the deeper themes at play. In quieter moments, he brought subtle recognition and shame when his character's bigotry was challenged. But the script rarely gave him room to develop these layers. His performance suggested a man genuinely wrestling with ingrained prejudices, but the film was too busy rushing toward action beats to explore this internal conflict. The real standout was Mandy Patinkin as Sam Francisco, the newcomer detective partnered with Sykes. Patinkin committed fully to the role, creating distinctive alien mannerisms and speech patterns that felt authentic rather than theatrical. His performance suggested entire cultural and personal histories that the film never had time to explore. When Francisco explains newcomer religious beliefs or reacts to human customs with confusion and curiosity, Patinkin made these moments feel genuine rather than expository. He managed to be both alien and deeply human, finding the universal emotions beneath the fantastical circumstances. His chemistry with Caan was the film's strongest asset, but their relationship development was constantly interrupted by generic plot mechanics. The supporting cast suffered even more from the script's misplaced priorities. Terrence Stamp appeared as the film's primary antagonist, a newcomer businessman involved in the drug trade, but his character was written as a standard-issue villain rather than the complex figure he could have been. Here was an opportunity to explore how oppression creates different survival strategies among the oppressed, examining the moral compromises made by those trying to gain power within an unjust system. Instead, Stamp was given little more than sneering dialogue and obvious evil schemes, wasting both his considerable screen presence and the character's dramatic potential. Even more problematic was the treatment of female characters. Susan Francisco, played by Kathleen Quinlan, existed primarily to provide exposition about newcomer culture and to be threatened during the climax. The human women were relegated to even smaller roles, mostly as victims or romantic interests with minimal agency. This was particularly frustrating given the rich possibilities for exploring how gender dynamics might differ between species or how immigrant women navigate different cultural expectations. Leslie Beavis as Cassandra, the alien sex worker, represented another missed opportunity. Her character could have explored themes of exploitation, survival, and identity, but instead served mainly as plot device and visual spectacle. The performances that worked best were the quieter, more intimate moments between characters. When the film allowed its actors to simply talk to each other about their experiences and differences, the genuine talent and commitment of the cast shone through, making the action-heavy sequences feel even more hollow by comparison. The disconnect between Alien Nation's potential and its actual reception reveals a perfect storm of miscalculation that doomed the film from the start. Critics approached the movie with cautious optimism, hoping for thoughtful science fiction in the vein of Blade Runner, but found themselves watching a watered-down police procedural with alien makeup. Roger Ebert's review captured the prevailing critical sentiment perfectly. He praised the film's ambition and Patinkin's performance, but noted that the movie is not really about aliens at all, but about a couple of cops. This observation cut to the heart of the problem. Alien Nation had abandoned its most interesting elements in favor of familiar formula. Variety echoed this frustration, calling it a missed opportunity that settles for conventional buddy cop dynamics when it could have explored genuinely provocative territory. The science fiction press was even harsher. Publications like Starlog and Cinefantastique criticized the film's timid approach to its own concepts. Writers who understood the original screenplay's darker vision felt betrayed by the sanitized final product. They recognized just how much had been sacrificed to studio demands, and their reviews reflected disappointment rather than outright dismissal. Audiences proved equally divided and ultimately indifferent. Science fiction fans, expecting cerebral exploration of xenophobia and cultural integration, found themselves watching generic car chases and shootouts. The film's marketing had promised aliens among us, but delivered cops with rubber foreheads. Meanwhile, action movie audiences seeking straightforward thrills were put off by the film's periodic attempts at social commentary and slower character moments. The box office numbers told the story starkly. Opening weekend brought in just $4.3 million, landing Alien Nation at number 4 behind A-Fish, called Wanda, Young Guns, and Cocktail. Word of mouth was lukewarm at best, and the film dropped precipitously in subsequent weeks. International sales helped push the total to $25.2 million, but against production and marketing costs, this represented a clear commercial failure. Perhaps most damning was the immediate contrast with the television series that premiered 11 months later. The TV version, working with a fraction of the film's budget, managed to explore exactly the themes and character dynamics that the movie had rushed past. Episodes dealing with newcomer religion, interspecies relationships, and assimilation complexities found appreciative audiences who had been hungry for this content all along. The series' success exposed the film's fundamental miscalculation. There was indeed an audience for thoughtful science fiction about immigration and prejudice, but that audience had been alienated by the movie's generic approach. Television critics noted how much more effectively the series handled its social commentary, proving that the original concept had been sound, but the execution compromised. Industry observers began using Alien Nation as a cautionary tale about studio interference. The film's failure wasn't due to unmarketable concepts or lack of audience interest. The TV series proved both existed, but rather to creative cowardice and tonal confusion. By trying to appeal to everyone, it had appealed to no one, becoming a textbook example of how focus groups and executive committees could drain the life from promising material. The ultimate irony of Alien Nation's commercial failure is how prescient and influential its core ideas would prove to be, even as the film itself faded from theatrical memory. Despite stumbling at the box office, the movie planted seeds that would grow into some of science fiction's most celebrated works over the following decades. District 9, Neil Blomkamp's 2009 breakthrough, owes an obvious debt to Alien Nation's central premise. Both films use alien refugees as metaphors for real-world immigration and racial tension, but District 9 succeeded precisely where Alien Nation failed, by committing fully to its allegorical vision rather than hedging with generic action beats. Blomkamp understood that the alien integration story was the story, not merely a backdrop for conventional plot mechanics. The critical and commercial success of District 9 vindicated everything Alien Nation had tried to accomplish, but lacked the courage to fully embrace. The influence extends beyond obvious homages. Shows like The Expanse and films like Arrival demonstrate how science fiction can tackle contemporary social issues through fantastical premises, following the template Alien Nation established, but executing it with the confidence the original film lacked. Even Marvel's recent emphasis on stories about otherness and integration, from the X-Men allegories to Black Panther's exploration of isolationism versus engagement, can trace conceptual DNA back to Alien Nation's immigrant narrative. More importantly, the themes that seemed too controversial for 1988 audiences have become unavoidably relevant in our current political climate. Immigration, refugee crises, and cultural assimilation dominate modern discourse in ways that make Alien Nation's central metaphor feel almost prophetic. The film's depiction of institutionalized prejudice, economic exploitation of displaced populations, and the challenge of maintaining cultural identity while adapting to new societies resonates with contemporary debates about border policies and refugee acceptance. The streaming era has given Alien Nation a second life with audiences who can appreciate its ambitions without the context of box office disappointment. Modern viewers, watching without expectations shaped by marketing campaigns or genre conventions, often find themselves surprised by the film's sincerity and relevance. Social media discussions frequently note how the film's failed elements, its earnest approach to prejudice, its focus on family dynamics, its refusal to demonize either side completely, actually feel refreshing compared to more cynical contemporary approaches. Film schools now teach Alien Nation as a case study in studio interference and missed opportunities, but also as an example of how good ideas can survive poor execution. The movie serves as a bridge between the socially conscious science fiction of the 1970s and the more sophisticated allegorical works that would emerge in the 2000s. It proved that audiences were ready for science fiction that engaged with real-world issues, even if the execution wasn't quite there yet. Perhaps most significantly, Alien Nation's failure taught Hollywood valuable lessons about trusting genre material. The success of later science fiction films that embraced, rather than apologized for their fantastical elements, can be traced back to failures like Alien Nation. Studios learned that attempting to broaden science fiction's appeal by making it less science fictional was ultimately self-defeating. The film now exists as a fascinating artifact, a bridge between what science fiction was and what it would become. A reminder that sometimes the most important legacy of a failed film isn't what it accomplished, but what it made possible for others to accomplish later. Alien Nation didn't fail because its ideas were wrong. It failed because Hollywood wasn't ready to trust them. In our current era of thoughtful science fiction and socially conscious blockbusters, maybe it's time to give this flawed but ambitious film another look. What do you think? Does Alien Nation deserve more credit than it received, or was its failure justified? Let me know in the comments below, and if you enjoyed this deep dive into cinema's fascinating failures, hit that subscribe button for more explorations of the movies that didn't quite work but still managed to change everything.